What would have happened if Hitler had won the war? Before starting the video, in order for this channel to grow and for history-related topics to come constantly, please do not forget to subscribe to my channel, open notifications, like my videos, write comments about the video under the videos and share the videos with your friends and people who are interested in the subject. If Hitler had won World War II, the global political landscape would have been radically different, with far-reaching consequences for geopolitics, human rights, technological advancement, and even daily life. While there are multiple ways a Nazi victory could have played out, historical documents such as Generalplan Ost, Hitler's own statements, and the known ambitions of the Nazi leadership give us insight into what such a world might have looked like. 1. The Nazi Empire in Europe. Had Germany triumphed, most of Europe would have fallen under direct Nazi control or become satellite states obedient to Berlin. Here's how it could have played out. United Kingdom. Hitler's plans for Britain were uncertain. If the Nazis had successfully invaded, Operation Sea Lion, Britain could have been occupied, with a Nazi puppet government installed, perhaps led by fascist sympathizers like Oswald Mosley. Alternatively, if the UK had surrendered in a peace deal, it might have retained its monarchy but under heavy German influence. Soviet Union. The Nazis' most ambitious plan was the conquest of the Soviet Union, Lebensraum. If Hitler had won on the Eastern Front, millions of Slavs, Jews, and other groups considered racially inferior would have been exterminated or enslaved. German settlers would have taken over the land, and the remainder of the population would have been pushed beyond the Ural Mountains or forced into perpetual servitude. France, Italy, and Western Europe. France, already occupied from 1940 to 1944, might have been permanently divided, with the northern part under direct German control and the southern Vichy regime continuing as a puppet state. Italy, allied with Germany, would likely have been a key player in the Nazi world order but ultimately subordinate to Berlin. Scandinavia and the Balkans, countries like Norway and Denmark, already under occupation, might have remained vassal states under Nazi rule. The Balkans, prone to resistance, would have faced brutal repression. 2. The Holocaust and Nazi racial policies. One of the darkest consequences of a Nazi victory would have been the continuation and expansion of the Holocaust. Extermination of Jews, with the final solution ongoing, every remaining Jewish community in Europe and potentially beyond would have been annihilated. Mass enslavement of Slavs, Slavic populations, particularly in Eastern Europe, were viewed as inferior and destined for slavery or death. Millions would have perished in forced labor. Romani, disabled, and undesirable groups, the extermination of the Romani people, disabled individuals, and political dissidents would have escalated. Eugenics programs, large-scale breeding programs, Lebensraum, and forced sterilization of undesirable elements would have been expanded. 3. A Cold War between Germany and the United States. If the US had remained a major world power, a Cold War-like rivalry could have developed between Nazi Germany and the US similar to the US-Soviet Cold War. This scenario might have included nuclear arms race. If Germany had acquired nuclear weapons, a project already underway, a balance of terror might have developed between the two superpowers. Global influence struggles. The US and Germany might have competed for dominance over South America, Africa, and Asia, as both sought to spread their respective ideologies. Space race under the Nazis. If Hitler had won, Nazi Germany's advanced rocket technology, such as the V2 program, might have led to a Nazi-led space race. Alternatively, some historians argue that if Britain and the Soviet Union had fallen, the US might have opted for a peace deal, leaving Europe under German control while focusing on the Pacific War against Japan. 4. Asia, a Japanese-German alliance or betrayal? Japan, Germany's Axis partner, was expanding aggressively across Asia and the Pacific. A victorious Hitler might have kept his alliance with Japan, dividing the world into German and Japanese spheres of influence. However, had Germany consolidated its power, it's possible that Hitler would have turned against Japan, viewing the Japanese as racially inferior. If the US had remained neutral or reached a peace agreement with Japan, Asia might have been dominated by an imperialist Japanese regime. 5. The United States, isolation or resistance. If Britain and the Soviet Union had fallen, the United States would have faced a choice. Negotiate peace with Germany and Japan, allowing them to dominate Europe and Asia. Continue the war alone, potentially developing nuclear weapons first to defeat Germany. Had the US opted for peace, Nazi propaganda would have expanded its influence worldwide. Nazi sympathizer movements in the US, such as the German-American Bund, might have gained power. American isolationism might have increased, avoiding global conflicts while Germany and Japan ruled the world. 6. No United Nations, no decolonization. The United Nations, founded in 1945 as a response to Nazi aggression, likely would not have existed. Decolonization movements in Africa and Asia might have been crushed or delayed indefinitely, as the victorious European Axis powers would have had no pressure to grant independence to their colonies. Countries that had hoped for Allied support in their independence struggles, such as India and Algeria, might have remained under colonial rule or been absorbed into the Axis system. 7. Technological developments under Nazi rule. Advanced weapons. Nazi Germany was already experimenting with jet engines, rockets, and even early stealth technology. Given more time, they might have developed an overwhelming military force. Surveillance state. The Nazis were pioneers in mass surveillance and propaganda. A Nazi-controlled world would likely have been highly controlled, with constant monitoring of citizens. Cultural and scientific stagnation. While Nazi Germany made advancements in certain technologies, its rigid ideology suppressed free thought. Many scientific and cultural breakthroughs made by Jewish and dissident scientists would never have occurred. 8. A dystopian nightmare? The world under Nazi rule would have been a dystopian nightmare of racial hierarchy, oppression, and totalitarian control. Literature like The Man in the High Castle and Fatherland imagines such a world with brutal repression, thought control, and ongoing warfare. In short, a Nazi victory would have reshaped the world into a brutal, authoritarian empire with mass genocide, limited personal freedoms, and endless expansionist wars. However, resistance movements would have inevitably emerged, much like they did in occupied Europe, making long-term Nazi dominance difficult to sustain. Would you like me to explore a specific aspect in more detail, such as how the war could have played out differently or how daily life might have changed under a Nazi world order?